I went to school in Sink Street in Dublin, which was a famous school. One particular morning, I was playing my mouth organ in the classroom. I was in primary school, aged 13 and a half at the time. And this brother came in from the classroom next door. He was a science brother. And he slapped me across the face and I started crying. He took the mouth organ off me. And our class wasn't actually due to start till 9:30, whereas his class started at 9. So obviously I was distracting his class. And anyway, a few days later, I went into the science room where he was and apologized. And he gave me the mouth organ back and he offered me sweets. And then he asked me would I be interested in seeing experiments in the laboratory, like blowing up glass, etc., with the Bunsen burners. And I said, yes, I would be interested. So he arranged then that I come the following Saturday to see some of these experiments. So I went there on a Saturday, rode down from my house, which was probably about a 20-minute ride on a bicycle. Went into the classroom and he showed me experiments, blowing up glass, and I was very fascinated by that. So gave me sweets and lollies and went home, and then he invited me back the following week. I went back the following week and then he was explaining the various parts of my anatomy, you know, these are your testicles and this is your penis. And he actually, I remember I had shorts in those days, and he actually took his trousers down and he took his penis out and he was rubbing his penis with my penis. And I knew that wasn't something that was normal, but I did it, you know, and at the end of the session he would give me sweets and fruit and dictate that I should tell nobody. So I didn't tell anybody, didn't tell my family. So I went back home again and the same thing was happening sort of 3 or 4 weeks on a trot. And I told a friend of mine called Mick Quinn, who's now passed away, about what was happening, and he actually wanted to catch him in the act with me, and because Mick was very streetwise and he knew more about life than I did, so he arranged that he would come with some of his mates and catch him in the act of molesting me and beat him up. And to me that didn't sound right. I said, no, I'm not happy with that. So about 7 or 8 years ago I saw an ad in the paper advertising people who probably required help, who'd been molested, you know, in industrial schools in Ireland and elsewhere. So I rang up the solicitors and I thought I'd be interested to find out more about it. But in the meantime, a friend of mine called Catherine Chambers, who was a friend of her advocate called Helen Last. So I arranged to meet Helen, and Helen and I had a very good discussion, and she promised that she could help me, and she introduced me to a psychologist called Joe Podolsky, because it was still playing in my mind at the time. It brought it all back again when having read that ad in the paper about kids being molested. So Helen decided to come with me on a trip to Ireland. I was due for a holiday and I was going to Ireland, and Helen promised to be my advocate in Ireland, which I thought was a great move on her part. And we went back to the Provinciale, and I think it was a Father John or something, or Brother John, yeah, he interviewed us, and Helen stayed with him indoors for a while, negotiating and telling him all about the incident and how I had suffered. And so at that time, they actually allowed us to go to the school where the original abuse took place. And I tried to get into that school previously when I was on holidays in Dublin. It was always closed. So on this particular occasion, they gave Helen and I permission to revisit that school, Sink Street School. So we got there, and there was a brother Plunkett, who I had met when I was actually training to be a brother myself subsequently. And he led us in and brought us into this science room where it all took place 50 years prior. And as soon as I walked into the classroom, I couldn't believe nothing had changed in 50 years. The Bunsen burners were still there. Chalkboard, you know, there's nothing spent. It was run down, dilapidated, but it was still being used as a classroom. And I thought, and all came flooding back to me, the memories of this brother standing exactly where I was standing, abusing me. And I broke down. I remember breaking down, and Helen comforted me, my advocate. And after that, we actually visited the cemetery in Baldoyle where this brother was buried, and we went to the grave, and prayers were recited over his grave. And I felt that helped a bit as well. I did forgive him, and that did help. And but it still lingers there. They did compensate me slightly, I think, you know. But they did mention that if they were to pay out so much, you know, it would open a can of worms and this sort of thing. So I came back to Australia relieved. I found closure after visiting, you know, the school and the grave. And the follow-up afterwards, Helen has been very supportive, as I said. And I wouldn't have been able to find closure without the help of In Good Faith.